I pulled up to my parents' driveway in my new Mercedes, the sleek black paint job reflecting the twinkling Christmas lights that adorned the front porch of the house I grew up in. The same house my father had just told me, in a voice cracking with shame, that they could no longer afford to keep. For a moment, I sat there with the engine idling, staring at the familiar two-story colonial where my artwork had once been hidden away in the basement rather than displayed on the refrigerator like my brother Michael's football trophies or my sister Elaine's debate certificates. I allowed myself to feel everything, the familiar knot of anxiety in my stomach, the echoes of dismissive comments, and now, the unfamiliar but intoxicating sense of power. What good is an art degree going to do you, Vanessa? My father's voice from 8 years ago rang in my ears as clearly as if he was sitting beside me. You'll be living in our basement until you're 40, begging for commissions to draw people's pets. I checked my lipstick in the rearview mirror, applied another coat of the expensive brand I'd grown fond of, and grabbed the manila envelope from the passenger seat. Showtime. The moment I stepped through the front door, I could smell my mother's famous apple pie and hear the familiar sounds of my family's Christmas Eve gathering, Michael's booming laugh, Elaine's precise, articulate speech as she inevitably discussed some political issue, and the undercurrent of my father's baritone, always commanding attention without having to raise his voice. Vanessa's here. My mother called out, rounding the corner from the kitchen, wiping her hands on the same Christmas apron she'd worn for the past 15 years. Her smile faltered slightly as she took in my appearance, the cashmere coat, the designer boots, the subtle but unmistakable gold jewelry. You look different. Good different or bad different? I asked, kissing her cheek. Just expensive, she replied with a nervous laugh. The living room fell silent as I walked in. My brother Michael, once the high school football star who peaked at 22, now sported a beer belly and a receding hairline. His wife Jessica gave me a tight-lipped smile from the couch where they sat with their 2 kids who were engrossed in their tablets. Elaine, always the academic overachiever, was perched on the arm of a chair, her Harvard Law sweatshirt a constant reminder of her credentials, her husband Todd standing dutifully beside her. And my father, grey now but still imposing, watched me with surprise from his worn leather recliner. Well, look who decided to grace us with her presence, Michael said, raising his beer bottle. The starving artist returns. Not exactly starving, I replied with a smile, unbuttoning my coat to reveal a dress that cost more than his monthly mortgage payment. Vanessa, honey, your father and I have some news to share with everyone after dinner, my mother said, her voice tinged with uncharacteristic anxiety. But let's not ruin Christmas Eve. I think I already know, Mom, I said gently. Dad called me last week. My father shifted uncomfortably in his seat. I was going to tell everyone tonight, he said, his voice lacking its usual authority. The business has been struggling for years, and with the economy the way it is, we've fallen behind on the mortgage. Elaine, always the academic overachiever, was perched on the arm of a chair, her Harvard Law sweatshirt a constant reminder of her credentials, her husband Todd standing dutifully beside her. The bank is foreclosing after the new year. The silence that followed was deafening. Michael stared at his beer, Elaine clutched Todd's hand, and my mother looked as though she might cry. You told Vanessa first? Elaine asked, the familiar competitive edge creeping into her voice. Why not call me? I could have looked at your finances, tried to work something out with the bank. Because, my father sighed heavily, Vanessa asked how I was doing when she called on my birthday. The rest of you just sent cards. I felt a small vindictive thrill at the wounded look on Elaine's face. For once, I wasn't the family disappointment. Can't you do something? Michael asked, looking at Elaine. You're the one with the fancy law degree. Corporate law doesn't help with personal bankruptcy, Michael, she snapped back. Well, maybe if someone hadn't insisted on getting the most expensive education possible, Michael retorted, and just like that, they were bickering as if we were teenagers again. I let them argue for a few minutes, watching the familiar dynamics play out. My father, defeated in a way I'd never seen before, didn't even try to mediate as he usually would. My mother disappeared into the kitchen, her way of avoiding conflict. Some things never changed. I have a solution, I finally said, my voice cutting through their argument. They all turned to look at me with varying degrees of skepticism. You? Michael scoffed. What are you going to do? Sell a painting? I smiled. Actually, yes. I already have. I opened the manila envelope and pulled out a glossy magazine. It was Architectural Digest, open to a spread featuring a minimalist mansion in Malibu. On the pristine white wall of the living room hung a large canvas, vibrant blues and greens swirling into a form that seemed both chaotic and perfectly balanced. See that? I pointed to the painting. That's mine. The owner paid $175,000 for it. The silence was absolute. I let the magazine fall open to a sticky note marking another page, another home, another one of my paintings, this time in the New York apartment of a famous actor. I don't understand, my father said, taking the magazine with trembling hands. These are yours? I've been selling my work under a pseudonym for the past 6 years, I explained. VJ Mercer. Maybe you've heard of her? She's becoming quite collectible. VJ. Vanessa Jane, my mother whispered from the doorway, having returned from the kitchen. I nodded. I didn't tell any of you because, well, you made it perfectly clear what you thought of my career choice. But how? Elaine asked, her face a mixture of confusion and dawning respect. After college, I moved to New York and worked as a barista while painting at night. I got lucky, a gallery owner came in regularly, and we got to talking. He took a chance on me, included one of my pieces in a group show. It sold. Then another sold, and another. I developed a style that caught on. About 3 years ago, things really took off when a piece was featured in the background of a Vogue photo shoot. I pulled out more magazines, more clippings, evidence of a career that had flourished in secret, while my family continued to view me as the impractical dreamer who would never amount to anything. Last year, I made just over $2 million, I said, trying to keep my voice steady despite the satisfaction coursing through me. And I've been saving, investing. I didn't change my lifestyle much until recently. 2 million? My father repeated, his voice hollow with disbelief. Which brings me to why I'm here, I continued, pulling out the final document from my envelope. I've made an offer on this house. The bank has accepted it. I'm buying it. You're buying our house? My mother asked, tears filling her eyes. Yes. And you and Dad can stay here as long as you want. Consider it paid in full. Michael let out a sound somewhere between a laugh and a cough. This is a joke, right? Do I look like I'm joking? I asked, gesturing to my designer outfit and then to the papers in my hand. Why would you do this? My father asked, his voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. After the way I dismissed your dreams. I took a deep breath. This was the moment I'd rehearsed in my head during countless sleepless nights. Because this house means something to me, despite everything. And because I wanted you all to understand something, value isn't always obvious at first glance. I looked around at their stunned faces and continued, every time I came home it was, when are you going to get a real job, Vanessa? Or maybe it's time to use that degree for teaching art instead. You never once asked to see my work. Not once. We were worried about you, my mother said softly. We just wanted you to be secure. I know, I acknowledged. But you could have trusted me, believed in me, even a little. Elaine stood up suddenly. Can I see them? Your paintings, I mean. Your actual work, not just in magazines. The request surprised me. I have a show opening in Chicago next month. You're all welcome to come. I'd like that, she said, and for the first time in years, there was no competition in her voice, just genuine interest. My father stood up too, moving slowly like his bones had aged a decade in the past hour. Vanessa, I don't know what to say. Thank you doesn't seem adequate. It's not about gratitude, Dad, I replied. It's about respect. I don't want you to thank me. I want you to finally see me. Michael cleared his throat. So, all those times you couldn't chip in for Mom and Dad's anniversary gifts or family vacations. I laughed. I was building a career, Michael. And honestly, after hearing year after year how foolish my choices were, I wasn't feeling particularly generous. That's fair, he admitted, looking properly chastised. I guess we all owe you an apology. You do, I agreed. But tonight isn't about apologies either. It's Christmas Eve, and I just wanted you all to know that you don't have to worry about losing your home. We can deal with the rest later. My mother wiped away tears and straightened her apron. Dinner's almost ready. Vanessa, would you help me in the kitchen? I followed her, knowing this was her way of seeking a private moment. In the kitchen, surrounded by the familiar smells of holiday cooking, she turned to me with eyes full of complicated emotions. When did you become so strong? She asked quietly. I've always been strong, Mom. You just never noticed because it didn't look the way you expected it to. She nodded slowly, accepting this truth. Your father and we thought we were protecting you from disappointment. I know. But you can't protect people from life by clipping their wings. You just keep them from flying. She reached out and touched my cheek, her hand smelling of cinnamon and apples. I'm sorry we didn't see you. But I see you now and I'm so proud. The sincerity in her voice pierced through layers of resentment I'd built up over the years. It didn't erase the past, but it created space for something new. Help me carry these to the table, she asked, gesturing to the dishes of food. As we brought dinner to the table, the conversation had a different quality than previous family gatherings. My father asked about my upcoming show. Elaine wanted to know about my technique. Even Michael seemed genuinely curious about the art world. Halfway through dinner, my father raised his glass. To Vanessa, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Who proved us all wrong in the most spectacular way possible. I've never been happier to be wrong in my life. As glasses clinked around the table, I felt the sweet satisfaction of vindication, but also something unexpected, a sense of peace. The revenge I'd imagined for years, the moment of proving my worth, had arrived. But now that it was here, I realized it wasn't about revenge at all. It was about finally being seen for who I truly was. Later that night, after the dishes were cleared and the family had dispersed to various corners of the house, I found myself alone in the living room, looking at the space where my childhood art had never been displayed. Tomorrow, I would tell them the rest of my plan, that I wanted to convert the basement into a studio where I could work when I visited, that I was establishing a scholarship fund for young artists at my old high school, that I was donating pieces to the local museum. But for tonight, it was enough to sit in the glow of the Christmas tree lights, holding the keys to a house that represented both painful memories and new beginnings. Success, I had learned, wasn't just about proving others wrong. It was about proving yourself right. And sometimes, the most satisfying revenge isn't about making others feel small, but about growing so big they can finally see you. As I sipped my wine, I smiled at the thought of my next painting series. I already had a title in mind, Recognition.